And welcome back to the Rick House. Cyrus Farmer here, the Stomp The Tee podcast. Folks, I'm going to tell you right now, we have a very exciting show for you tonight. Let me tell you some of the things we're going to be getting into. We're going to be talking about, obviously, the great debates with the opening of the NBA season just recently occurring. We're going to be talking about LeBron versus Jordan versus Kobe, who is truly the GOAT, who's truly the greatest of all time. I got some interesting pieces of information for you might want to consider, and I will give you my opinion on that very question. We will also be talking about, as I said in the clip, the debacle that was Tyson Paul, the non-fight. I'll call it the event. Boy, oh boy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I definitely was, let's say, underwhelmed. Spoiler alert. And finally, of course, the ever popular, what are you drinking tonight? But before we get started, folks, I do want to jump into a couple of things that I wanted to get off my chest, actually. Got to talk NFL. Guys, what a week in the NFL. I'm telling you right now, this past week, it was big wins. Big wins for Pittsburgh. Big wins for Buffalo. Big wins for the Eagles. Look, I think either Buffalo or Pittsburgh is going to have a chance to challenge Kansas City for that home field advantage spot. I mean, it's amazing how well Pittsburgh has played this year. I got to be absolutely honest. I'm very surprised and impressed. That defense is always going to be good, especially under Tomlin. But kudos to Russell Wilson, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the Steeler faithful. It looks like they have a chance to continue this magic carpet ride that they're on all the way through the playoffs. We shall see. Buffalo. Will they ever get over the hump? I got to say it. If they don't get over the hump this year, I think they may never get over the hump. But let's be fair. They have Josh Allen, so they probably got at least 2 or 3 more cracks at it. They'll probably be in pretty good shape. But they have been impressive considering all that they lost. And for them to just keep chugging along. Obviously, Josh Allen has elevated his status, which was always very high to begin with, from about his second year in the league on. He is having a tremendous season. When you talk about MVPs, obviously, Allen is in the MVP conversation. I think up until this past weekend, Lamar was in the MVP conversation. I think including this past week, Saquon is in that MVP conversation. And quiet as it's kept, could you honestly see Jared Goff as the MVP of the NFL? I think you kind of have to consider it. That Lion team is flying right now. Oh my gosh. Now, which brings me to this. Can the Lions be stopped? I don't know if the Lions are going to lose more than one more game this season. They are playing so well. They have such a dynamic running game. They have weapons all over the field. Goff is playing above average on his worst day. I shouldn't say on his worst day. He did throw 5 interceptions about a week ago. But he's playing above average, generally speaking, if not fantastic. And, they got speed to burn, and they're incredibly hard to beat at home, which really makes it tough for anybody who thinks that they can go into Detroit and go to the Super Bowl by beating the Lions at Ford Field. Not impossible, but it's going to be an uphill battle. I also think that the over-under for Detroit losses for the season, probably about 2.5. And I don't know why, but I'm going to take the over. I think they're probably going to end up with 3 losses for the season, and I think they're going to bring a couple different teams into the mix for home field. We'll see what happens. Doesn't mean that Detroit won't get the home field. Doesn't mean that Detroit won't be the top seed. But I think they're probably going to lose 2 more games between now and the end of the year. I think they're going to end up 14-3. How legit are the Eagles? Boy, I'm telling you, this Eagles defense is playing so well right now. They're improving and impressing. And the best thing about it is that they have this great mix of young and old. Players coming together to get it all done. I really, really think this defense is only going to get better, not just this season, but for the next 4 to 6 years. They have a nice mix of talent. And I think Howie Roseman is going to continue to add to that talent. We know that if Jalen Hurts takes care of the football, it is going to be very difficult for the Eagles to lose games. I mean, they just have too many weapons between Saquon, AJ, Devontae, Dallas. They really, really are loaded on offense. I can't wait to see this next stretch of games. I really want to see what they're going to do next Sunday night against the Rams, because I haven't seen the Rams much, to be absolutely honest. And I know they're always going to be a well-coached team with Sean McVay, but I just haven't seen them physically play any games, just like the Chargers. I haven't seen them play. I know they're 7-3 or 7-2, whatever their record is. So I'm looking forward to getting a look at this Rams team on Sunday Night Football next week, this coming week, actually. So, but I think between the Rams and Baltimore, we're going to learn a lot about the Eagles. And let's not forget, they got Pittsburgh coming up also. So those are 3 circle the calendar games that will completely be worth watching. By the way, I was thinking about something. I was preparing for tonight's show, and one of the things we're going to be talking about are signature moments, right? Most people, begrudgingly, myself included, consider Tom Brady the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Do I think he's the greatest player? No. I'd probably give that to either Jim Brown or Jerry Rice, someone like that. I'd have to think about it a little more. But he's clearly the greatest quarterback, in my mind, in the history of the NFL. But the strange thing about Tom Brady is, what do you consider Tom Brady's signature moment as a quarterback? I want you to think about that. I mean, there are so many quarterbacks in this league, so many players in this league, who have what you would call, quote-unquote, signature moments, things that define their career or embody what they're about as players, moments that live forever because they happened in real time. So many of Brady's wins, his Super Bowl wins, his championship game wins, they ended in either kicks or defensive plays. It's very, very strange. As great as he is, and I think he is the greatest quarterback of all time, give me a signature play. Does Tom Brady have I'm looking at the list here. Does Tom Brady have a moment like Eli had with David Tyree in the Super Bowl to beat Tom Brady? That pass. Does he have a 13 seconds? That's all I have to say. 13 seconds. Who am I talking about? Of course, the one and only Patrick Mahomes. When he comes back, 13 seconds left in the game, after Buffalo on the road drives to win what they think is going to be a winning touchdown, and Mahomes, in 13 seconds, drives his team down the field for a game-tying field goal to go to overtime, and they win the game in overtime. Here's another one. Do you remember this past weekend, Josh Allen's touchdown run against the Kansas City Chiefs? That's a signature play in my mind. It was 4th and 2. And he runs the ball all the way into the end zone like a bruiser to win the game, essentially, to ice the game. Emmitt Smith, separated shoulder against the New York Giants, end of the season. I think it was going into their second or their first Super Bowl. I think it was their second Super Bowl. And they need that win for, I think, home field advantage throughout. And he plays with a separated shoulder, guts it out. Unbelievable. I'll give you another one. This is a guy we don't talk about very much anymore. But obviously, he had a legitimate amount of success in the NFL, and that is Ben Roethlisberger, former Pittsburgh Steeler great. And that's not really overstating it. He is one of their greats in the history of that franchise that has a ton of greats. Do you remember the pass to San Antonio Holmes in the Super Bowl to essentially win that game? That's a signature play. Does Tom Brady have any of those that come to mind for you? I can't think of any. He comes back from 25 down against the Falcons in the Super Bowl. Yeah, Julian Edelman made the signature play in that game, I think. They beat Seattle when they're staring defeat squarely in the face because Pete Carroll decides he's going to let Russell Wilson throw a pass from the 1 yard line. And Malcolm Butler makes the signature play in that game. The tuck rule. Brady essentially gets sacked, fumbles the ball in the snow in New England, and the refs give the Patriots the ball back, and Adam Vinatieri makes a play in that game. There are so many of these games in which Brady won championships, him and his team. Championships, and advanced to championship games, i.e. the Super Bowl, where I don't remember. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm just telling you I don't remember these unbelievable. Joe Montana getting the ball to Dwight Clark, the catch in '82 against the Dallas Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl. Joe Montana years later hitting John Taylor in the end zone against Boomer Esiason's Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl 23. I don't remember those types of moments in Brady's career, even though he is, again, in my mind and many others, the greatest quarterback to ever play the game professionally. So I just thought it was strange. Okay, guys. There's one other thing I want to get into before we start the meat of our show. This is a little bit of a sidetrack. Do you have, to your knowledge, any pictures hanging in your home with your spouse in them, accompanied by an ex? An ex-husband, a significant other, an old boyfriend, you name it. And do you have any pictures in your home where you are pictured with an ex-wife, an ex-significant other, an ex-girlfriend? Do you? I don't know. I mean, I've never gone through every picture that we have hanging in our home, but I don't think we have any pictures. I know I haven't hung up any pictures of myself with exes of any status in our home. And I'm not sure, but I'm guessing my wife hasn't hung up any pictures like that either. It was an interesting question to me. I got a buddy who is a divorced man, and he's seeing a woman right now who is a widower. And of course, not being in a relationship outside of the one that she's in with my buddy, she has all sorts of pictures in her home. A lot of the pictures that she has in her home are her with her former husband, the husband who died, who's a widow. She's a widow. And And I was just thinking, I mean, if they end up getting married, would you feel comfortable, if you're my buddy, the guy, having pictures of her with her former husband displayed in the house, whether it's 1 or 18? Doesn't matter the number. I just found that to be an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, look, you can say what you want to about Joe Biden, and everyone voted a couple of weeks ago, so your voices were heard. That's fine. But I will say this. Dr. Jill Biden had to hear about Joe Biden's former wife, obviously, who died tragically with his daughter in that horrible accident for decades now. For decades. And I would assume that there are pictures of President Biden's wife in their home. I don't know if I'm a big enough man to actually be okay with having pictures of my wife with one or multiple of her exes in the home. It's just food for thought. I thought it was very strange. I mean, you think about it. Everyone takes pictures. For those of you who went to prom, you take pictures, for prom with your date, this, that, and the other. Well, unless you married your prom date, in my opinion, that picture, that prom picture, has no use in your home. I mean, that should remain in your parents' home. Your parents are the one who paid for the prom pictures. Yeah, they got you dressed up in the frame with your date. And that's for them. That's not for you 20, 30, 40 years later, especially if you're not married to the person in the picture. Again, families are so different now. There are so many blended families, and I applaud that. Not everyone meets someone in elementary school and they stay married for 78 years. That's a rarity. That is not the norm. So I get it. There are definitely circumstances in which you would find yourself celebrating relationships that have occurred in the past while you're in a different relationship presently. I just got to be honest. I don't know. Actually, I do know. Let's be fair. I don't want to see my wife hanging up on the wall with a picture of one of her exes. I don't want to see it. I mean, I can't have it in my home. Now, I might be looking at a picture right now and say, oh, yeah, that's your buddy. And it turns out they went out for 3 years. Who knows? What do I know? All right. But I'm guessing and I'm assuming and I'm hoping that all the pictures we have in our home don't include any of my wife's exes. Who knows? Maybe I should ask. Maybe I shouldn't, actually. So there's that. Now, on to the meat of the program. LeBron versus Jordan versus Kobe. Why did I pick those three players? It's interesting because obviously LeBron, well, I shouldn't say it. Let me start this way. Obviously, Jordan versus anyone is usually the comparison. Jordan versus Kobe. Jordan versus LeBron. I mean, you can go throughout history, right? But I do think with LeBron becoming the NBA's all-time leading scorer, I think it was last season, it's a discussion worth having. And I gathered some information for you guys here so that I can kind of put this whole argument in context and you can see what you think about the information that's presented, because I can definitely tell you what I think at the end of this presentation. Without further ado, obviously, before we get started, I want to say there are other great players, and this is no disrespect to them. The other great players I want to mention are Kareem, obviously the former all-time leading scorer in NBA history. Bill Russell, of course. Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson. There are probably about 8 players that you could name who could be in the running for greatest player of all time. But really, if you're not talking about Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, there's probably only like one or two more that you would put in that contention. Magic, I would put in there, but as much as I love Magic Johnson, he's just not the greatest player of all time. And I thought he was for years. But I do have to say that it turned out not to be the case. No, through no fault of his own, by the way. I do have to add a codicil. Wilt Chamberlain. Let's be honest. Wilt Chamberlain was the definition of an anomaly. He was so prolific that people take his accomplishments for granted. And I think actually, and I wasn't alive back in '57 when he came into the league, but I think people actually took his accomplishments somewhat for granted in real time during the course of his career. The thing that hurt Wilt Chamberlain more than anything else was with all that prolific talent, he was only able to win 2 championships. Now, he had the misfortune of going up against a Boston Celtic team that was one of the great teams of all time, with one of the greatest players and or winners of all time in Bill Russell, who happened to play the same position as Wilt. But Wilt also lost the NCAA championship in college. Wilt went to Kansas. He was from Philadelphia, but he went to Kansas to go play. There's some great stories about Wilt Chamberlain. They say, he used to have this drop top that he would drive in Kansas, and he would drive from Kansas to Philadelphia. Supposedly he had a lead foot. He was like, it's not hard to believe. Very fast driver. But he lost to North Carolina. I think it was triple overtime, the NCAA championship. I think it was 1956. So it's not that he just lost to Russell. A man with all this prodigious talent couldn't find ways to win more. And I think if Wilt Chamberlain wins 4, 6 championships, there is zero question about who the greatest player of all time was. His records are through the roof. So let's leave Wilt out of this conversation. Unfortunately for Wilt, that's been the case for so much of his career. But he's not going to be considered in this conversation simply because of the lack of championships. Now, I'm going to read you some information, and I want to know what you think. LeBron. He's obviously the NBA's all-time leading scorer. He has 4 MVPs, regular season MVPs, 4 finals MVPs, and 1 scoring title. Michael Jordan. 5 MVPs, regular season MVPs, 6 MVPs, finals, and he is a 10-time scoring champion. Kobe. You say, what about Kobe? Okay, let me tell you. Kobe only has 1 MVP, and I remember this like yesterday. Someone said, I think it was ESPN, the day Kobe won the MVP for that season. Someone said, Kobe Bryant wins his first MVP, and that was factually true. But the way it sounded to me, the way I heard it, is that the announcer was basically intimating that this was going to be Kobe's first MVP out of many, or he's going to go on a run. And I'm like, it's his first MVP, yes. It's his first MVP, true. But it sounded to me like they were saying he was going to win more, at least implying that. Obviously, he did not. He only has 1 MVP. He won 2 finals MVP. And Kobe is a 2-time scoring champion. Now, if you just look at scoring alone, I believe, now I'm not positive about this, but I believe that Michael Jordan has, as a scoring champ, he is, as a 10-time scoring champ, I think that's the record for the league. I have to look that up. Apologies for not actually getting that stat. I'm just thinking about that right now. I think he has the most scoring titles in the history of the NBA. And I think the next closest is four or five, something like that. I'll look that up, and I'll get back to you on that. But 10-time scoring champ? Come on. LeBron led the league in scoring once. Just prolific. I'm just talking about Jordan. It is so hard to lead the league in scoring. And then to do it 10 times, pretty hard to beat. LeBron's career high in a game, points scored, 61 points. He averaged 30 or more points a season 3 times in his career. He scored 50 or more points 14 times in his career, and he has one playoff game with 50 or more points. Let's compare that to Jordan. Jordan averaged 30 or more points 8 times in his career. 30 or more points a season 8 times in his career. That means when you roll the basketball out, Jordan is good for 30 or more. Literally, half his career. I think Jordan only played 15 seasons. Half his career, he's scoring 30 or more. You got to shut him down, but you can't. His career high is a surprisingly low 69 points. I was very surprised to hear that, actually. I thought it would be higher. I mean, it can't be that much higher because we know, I think David Robinson scored 71 points. We know about Wilt's 100. There are numbers when you get up in the upper echelon as far as points in a single game that we pretty much remember. But I was surprised that Jordan's high, according to my research, was only, and I say only, was only 69. Here's the thing about Jordan, though. He scored 50 or more points 31 times in his career. 31 times. And in the playoffs, he scored 50 or more 8 times in his career. Now, there's a reason, folks, that we are leaving Wilt Chamberlain out of this discussion, which by rights, it shouldn't even be close. Wilt Chamberlain probably was the greatest player in the history of the NBA. Because Jordan's 31 times that he scored 50 or more, second all time to Wilt. I told you that. You know how many times Wilt Chamberlain scored 50 points or more in a game? 118 times. Let me repeat that. Wilt Chamberlain scored 50 or more points in a game 118 times. I mean, you're going to tell me he's not the greatest player of all time? Obviously, he's not because of the lack of championships. But I digress. Kobe. Kobe had a career high, obviously. Everyone knows this who knows Kobe Bryant. In his career, he scored 81 points, and he did it in 3.5 quarters. Phil Jackson, being Phil Jackson, decided to show everyone, in my opinion, who's really boss, and sat Kobe for the last half of the last quarter when he realistically had a chance to score 100 in that game. Yes, the game was a blowout. I think they were playing Toronto. Yes, the game was a blowout. And yes, they didn't need to play Kobe any longer in order to win the game. But Kobe was obviously having a very special night. And if you're Phil Jackson, you don't get in the way of that night. You let the kid play. He's a man at that point. You let him play. You let him play and see what he can do. Because you get very few opportunities in life to kind of cross a threshold where everything is clicking for you and you can do something really, really, really special. So I'm down on Phil Jackson for pulling him in that game. I was down on him when it happened. All right, so Kobe also he averaged 30 points a season 5 times. 30 points or more, 5 times. Kobe scored 50 points in a game 25 times. That's third all time. Wilt, Michael, Kobe. Michael scored it 31 times. Kobe had 25 50-point or more games. And Kobe scored 50 points once in a playoff game. All right. We talked about signature plays earlier with Mr. Tom Brady, TB12. LeBron's signature play, and these are only my opinions, so you may have different recollections. But LeBron's signature play, I think, is, without question, the block. I think it was on Draymond Green in Game 7 against the Warriors to complete Cleveland's comeback. I think Kyrie hit the game-winning shot a series or two, a possession or two before. Cleveland, to complete Cleveland's comeback from down 3-1 to win the NBA, their first NBA championship. LeBron does the job. He blocks the shot from behind on a breakaway layup. Anyway, I think that's his signature play, but I don't really remember many other signature plays from LeBron. It's very strange. I know for a fact, without knowing for a fact, that he has had more signature plays. I just don't remember them. They don't come to mind to me like that block in Game 7 against the Golden State Warriors. In some ways, he's very much like Tom Brady that way, which I think is interesting because Tom, I think, is the NFL's all-time passing yardage leader as well. He's passed Peyton Manning. I think he's the NFL's all-time leading touchdown thrower as well. But again, not a lot of signature plays that I remember. And LeBron, I think, is very similar that way. LeBron obviously had 10 finals appearances. But unfortunately for him, those 10 appearances are diminished by his 4-6 record. Let's just be fair. And I love LeBron as a person and as a player. But when you are LeBron James, and a lot of those losses were not his fault. But you cannot, if you're LeBron James, lose to the Dallas Mavericks your first year in Miami. You can't do it. You can't. Dirk Nowitzki was a great player. He's a Hall of Famer. I think Jason Kidd was on that team. Jason Terry was on that team. They were all older, and LeBron was in his prime. And I think they had a 2-0 lead. You cannot lose that series under any circumstances. It can happen to the best of us. Who can explain why? But what I can say is you can't lose that series if you're LeBron James. And I think that series, more than any other, hurts his historical status because he's 5-5 at that point. He's 500 in his finals appearances, and I think that kind of changes the way people view him historically if he wins that series. Jordan, obviously. What's your signature Michael Jordan moment? There's just a plethora to choose from, and that is the difference with Jordan. I mean, is it the shot over Elo when they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoff game? Is it the hand switch when he's in his first finals versus the Lakers? Is it the three-point barrage where Jordan just runs down the court and shrugs because he's hitting so many three-pointers that he's like, I'm out of my mind, but what do you want me to say? I'm that good. Is it, when he pushes off Brian Russell to hit the game winner against Utah in what many thought was his final shot of his career before he came back to play with Washington? Is it the flu game? I mean, to me, that's what convinced me that Jordan is the greatest player of all time until LeBron came along. When I saw him against Utah in the flu game, gutted out in a way that I thought was humanly impossible, not knowing how he felt, but just knowing how he looked. That basically made me consider Jordan the greatest player over Magic, who had I always considered the greatest player prior to that. So, the other thing about Jordan is he has obviously 2 three-peats, 6-0 in the finals. Let's not forget he took 3 years off in his prime, Michael Jordan, to play baseball. All right. Kobe. Kobe has plenty of signature moments, but I think the 2 that come to mind to me really are his alley-oop to Shaq against Portland. That was a Game 7 also. I think it was Western Conference Finals to get Shaq's Lakers to their first finals. And also the 2 clutch free throws that Kobe hit after tearing his Achilles. Think about this. The man tears his Achilles, pops, right? He gets fouled on the play. And there's a documentary. I think it was maybe it was the Dear Basketball documentary or something, where Kobe basically details how he felt during that play and the year-long rehab that he went through to come back from that Achilles tear. For him to go to the line, walk on his own power, hit those 2 free throws because he'd been fouled, and then walk off the court back into the locker room, tremendous. I mean, that basically tells you everything you need to know about Kobe Bryant. Will, desire, fierce competitive nature. Kobe, he was in 7 finals, 5-2. That's the difference between Kobe and LeBron, right? If Kobe was 3-4 in the finals, people would not talk about Kobe the way that they talk about Kobe now. It's strange. Now, I have to say, it's easy to take Kobe for granted, but just going over these numbers, I can really see why he's held in such high regard among basketball fans. I mean, Kobe was kind of different. He's hampered by the fact that he came in at such a young age, but was not given the opportunity, Del Harris, thank you very much, to really play and kind of, make his bones his first year and a half in the NBA. His talent was undeniable, but for whatever reason, Harris felt like they had to protect him. And he came in spot playing. Unlike LeBron, who Cleveland put in the lineup from the very beginning and just let him lead and win and make plays. So Kobe's kind of different. I mean, if he didn't have Shaq on his team, he probably would have been considered a better version of Allen Iverson. And, in some ways, Kobe was Allen Iverson after Shaq left before they got Pau Gasol, because Kobe would just score, and score some more. And they would win some games, they would lose some games, but he was an undeniable talent. Brilliant. But obviously he would have to be 3rd on my list. Higher than I thought he would be. But of these 3, he would have to be 3rd. Which obviously brings us to the 2nd place on the list. LeBron James. LeBron, for all his accomplishments, and no one can ever take his accomplishments away from him, he doesn't have the status that Jordan has. Think of signature moments alone, right? If you go pound for pound, you run out of LeBron signature moments before you get halfway down the Jordan list. This is just my opinion. And the problem is LeBron's gift as a player is also his curse. And that gift is he doesn't care enough about making his point that he is the man, that he is the greatest, that he is going to beat you, that he's going to do it, Not just his team, but he's going to drive the train that's going to run you over. Which obviously is what Jordan had and still has. He's always had it. He is much of a mythic figure as Michael Jordan is in the American sports psyche. There's a reason his status is so mythic. I mean, the only two athletes I can think of that compare to Michael Jordan are Tiger Woods and Muhammad Ali, because these three athletes are bigger than the sports they played, obviously, but their accomplishments alone within the sport make them larger than life. Even if you take everything else out of the equation, if you just look at their performance within their sports, it's pretty hard to beat. Jordan, strangely enough, as mythic as his status is, he's probably underrated historically. I mean, because we forget just how great he was. Again, the man took 3 years off in his prime, to play minor league baseball. Who does that? So, Jordan 1, LeBron 2, Kobe number 3. Again, apologies to other players that I left off that list, but this was a very specific comparison. Next. Okay, let's get into it. Tyson Paul, the fight, I'm using air quotes. Boy, I mean, I got to tell you, this was such a joke as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not a negative person by nature. I'm actually very positive. I tend to be very, very much an optimist. But a couple things. If you're Mike Tyson, if you're going to take that fight, actually try to win the fight. Literally, try to win the fight. I mean, look, we all knew it was trouble when Tyson walks into the ring, he's got a knee brace on. Like, what? Oh, my gosh. Father time, undefeated, I know. And then, on top of all of that, you throw no punches after the first round. In the first round, you didn't throw many punches in that round either. But it was a plethora compared to what you threw the rest of the match. What a joke. Oh, I got to tell you, I mean, it was a complete fiasco. The 2-minute rounds, look, I'm not some boxing aficionado, but I do know that boxing, by definition, usually has 3-minute rounds and 1 minute between rounds. 2-minute rounds? I mean, every time a round got started, it was like, oh, tap, 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 10 seconds left. I mean, what a joke. Oh, it was so bad. And who holds a big fight, any kind of fight, on a Friday? When was the last time you ever saw a championship boxing fight on a Friday? It doesn't happen. You always do it on a Saturday. I almost forgot about the fight, honestly, because I thought it was going to be last Saturday, not this past Friday. And I just happened to look at my calendar, and I was listening to the radio, like, oh, yeah, Tyson Paul tonight. I was like, no, it's not tonight. It's actually tomorrow, Saturday. No, it was that night, thankfully. I got that alert, and I watched the fight. But what a joke. Oh, my gosh. And look, Mr. Paul, I understand you are doing the best you can to learn the sport of boxing. And unlike some people, I'm not going to kill you for fighting. These aren't even tomato cans, right? I'm not going to kill you for fighting people way out of their age range compared to you, way out of their prime compared to you, way out of their depth when you're fighting a MMA guy who isn't just a straight boxer. You're trying to learn the game. I think Jake Paul's been fighting for 5 years, something like that. Most people who've been fighting for 5 years are like 14, 17. They have experience under their belt. So he's learning the game in real time. But the problem is, his technique is so bad that it's not even fun to watch him against a defenseless opponent. I mean, And his technique don't justify his antics. Look, not everybody's Floyd Mayweather, all right? Where you can see sparring session, he hits the target glove. Pa, 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 pa. Not everyone can do that, but you'll see Jake Paul. They showed it in the locker room. He's in the dressing room. He throws like one punch, pop, pop to a target man, and that's it. And then he's just like in a crouch. I was like, "That's your warm up." It's very strange. Now, here's the question: did Jake keep Tyson around? Did he actually go out of his way not to hurt Tyson because of his quote-unquote respect for him? I have one answer. Who knows and who cares, right? What a joke. The fight was a joke. So, that brings me to the one question I always like to ask around this time in the episode. Folks, what are you drinking tonight? Well, I can tell you what I am drinking. It is McFarland's Reserve Select Cask Strength. Now, folks, I have to tell you a little bit about this product. This is it's kind of like a Total Wine and More special. When I say special, I don't mean special as in it's discounted price. I mean special as in it's the kind of product you will find in a store like Total Wine and More, which I have no problems with Total Wine and More. They carry a fantastic inventory. It's not the only shop that I shop at, but and they carry things at very good prices. But that being said, McFarland's Reserve Select Cask Strength, it's like Walcott. I mean, it's something you're going to see them push because, I don't know, maybe they get a deal on it. Who knows? Let me give you some info. This clocks in at 56.2 ABV, which is 112.4 proof. Nice little strength there. It's distilled in Kentucky, and it's bottled in Kentucky. But you notice I didn't say it's distilled and bottled in Kentucky. Two separate sentences. Now, on the label, it says it's bottled by the Kentucky Whiskey Bottling Company. But most people think that the bourbon is sourced by an outfit named IJW Whiskey Company. They have this huge facility in Kentucky. And the most interesting thing about their facility is they don't do any distilling there. Apparently what these people do, IJW, is they buy a lot of Kentucky bourbon from different sources and blend them. And that's how they create their product. And they bottle them there. I'm going to do a little more research on the IJW Whiskey Company. And I'll bring that to you when I get it. But there's no age statement, of course. The strangest thing about it is that it is $33 a bottle. Now, you might be asking, Cyrus, you say this is kind of a Total Wine and More special. You say it's $33 a bottle. You say it's 56.2 ABV. What am I doing here? Am I going to drink this? Am I going to enjoy this? Is this basically a dud? Folks, I got to tell you, it's surprisingly drinkable. I mean, it just is. I'm not going to lie to you on this. This McFarland's Reserve Select Cask Strength. First things first. You drink it at 112 proof. The burn is so muted. It's surprisingly drinkable. Now, I'm not going to give you any notes about like apricot or molasses or maple or whatever. But I will say, for $33 a bottle, it's definitely something you should have in your bar. Now, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if I pull out the McFarland's in front of company, you know, let's be fair, the bottle looks cheap. But I will drink it on my own, especially with no one around, and especially for $33 a bottle. Who doesn't like value? Folks, that is tonight's show. I want you to remember to like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies all about the Stomp the Tee podcast. We're inching closer and closer to having some of the other aspects of this show up and running. Like I say, the website should be up and running by the end of the year. We're closer and closer to getting these audio versions of the podcast out into the ether. So hang with us, bear with us, hang in there. And obviously, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. Now, next week, apparently it is Whiskey Fest season because I will be in New York at Whiskey Advocate, the magazine, their Whiskey Fest this week. And I will tell you all about that the next show. And that will be a special pre-Thanksgiving Stomp the Tee podcast. I will drop it on Wednesday, which is the same day this is dropping. So tonight's show will air on Wednesday. Next week's show will air on Wednesday as well. And for all of you, we'll say this again next week, who are listening and watching, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving, but more of that next week. Until then, it's Irish Farmer, Stomp the Tee podcast, and as always, we will see you on the first tee. Hit 'em straight.